Married at First Sight, season 16, episode 13. So this is the episode where the couples write letters to their younger selves and they take their spouses to where they grew up, or in many cases, they just go to a place that's like the doppelganger of where they grew up, because most of them are not even from Nashville. I mean, they keep running this same formula season after season after season with the letters and visiting childhood places, as if it's the secret sauce for having long-lasting marriages on the show. I don't see why they don't look at the couples individually and give them assignments according to their own struggles. Like send Shaq and Kirsten to a MABA conference, Make America Bald Again, or send Airris and Jasmine to the Orgies Party of One Recovery Center. You know, places that help them with their specific challenges. Anyway, let's get into this episode. Gina and Chuck Norris. Okay, I have to admit, I am completely uninterested in Gina and Chuck Norris at this point. They figured out how to be friends. Whoopee frickin' do. Good for them. Boring for us. Like, I barely pay attention to their story at this point. But in the meantime, he used to play soccer. She was a bartender while she was in hair school. Blah, blah, blah. But when Gina invited her hairstylist over to the apartment, though, I was hoping it would turn into a matchmaking session. Like maybe she would try to hook Chuck up with one of her friends. Now that would be must-see TV. But she didn't. Instead, they just talked about... I don't know what they were talking about. I seriously wasn't paying attention. Kirsten and Shaq. So we see Kirsten standing in front of an Airbnb pretending it's one of her listings because she's a realtor, you know. I don't believe for 1 second that this was one of her listings. The logistics of filming, permits, just knowing enough about reality TV. Color me cynical, but I'm not buying it. Anyway, when they sat down to discuss their future and she carried on and on about how Shaq needs to buy her a house, I was waiting for her to start laughing. I thought she was kidding. I was like, girl, you are on the wrong show because they do not match according to finances. As a matter of fact, you don't even have to have finances to be on this show. They don't hesitate to match folks who are unemployed. But in terms of her expecting Shaq to buy her a house, I'm not mad at her for wanting what she wants, but as a realtor, I would expect her to already own a home. It's like paying for financial advice from someone who doesn't have any savings. You gotta walk the talk. Remember when they used to have the couples disclose their finances to each other? They need to start that up again, especially to bring this sister back down to earth. Besides, where did all this come from? Before Shaq dingled his dangle in her, all she was thinking about was how to avoid looking like a villain on this show, not to mention needing to buy a dresser for her old bland apartment. But now that he hit it, she's like, oh, you and your slippery bald head owe me a house. That's the cost of my sugar bowl. In the meantime, I'm like, girl, look in the mirror. What are you doing to make this man feel compelled to buy you a taco, let alone a house? Like, how are you jazzing up his life? Like, both y'all need to sit down somewhere. So later, Kirsten took Shaq to one of her childhood homes. She said she came from a good family, then explained it by saying her dad would buy her and her brother all kinds of stuff, plus always gave them a lot of Christmas presents. I thought that was an interesting definition of a good family. Instead of feeling love, seeing how good her parents got along, and how her dad always got to eat the big piece of chicken. My family was a good one because they bought me a members only jacket. Okay, I know I just dated myself with that one. When she told Shaq she was holding him to the standard of how her dad raised her, which is by being a provider, but she's hesitant to introduce him to her dad, I was like, child, I'm confused. Where exactly do you stand with Shaq right now? Do you even like him? I feel like Shaq needs to take it back to elementary school and pass her a note that says, I like you. Do you like me? If yes, check this box. If no, check this one. Because I'm not getting vibes from Kirsten that she's team Shaq and elated to be his wife. That's just not jumping at me from the screen. It just looks like she's finally figured out how to tolerate his ass. All right, so we have a new nickname. One of my longtime subscribers, Be Woke, referred to Airris as Orgy in the comments, and I cannot get that out of my head. So that's it. I'm calling Airris Orgy from now on. Shout out to Be Woke. Hey, girl, hey. All right, so Jasmine met up with one of her friends and said her attraction is fading for Orgy. Fading? Girl, your attraction should have been as black as a tunnel in Central Park with no lights on at 2 o'clock in the morning. But I'm happy to hear that you're finally seeing that this dude ain't for you. As for Orgy, he's finally ready to open up and have more meaningful conversations rather than carrying on and on about his sexcapades. So he took Jasmine to a baseball card collector's store and he talked about how he used to collect baseball cards and moved a lot when he was a kid. And that his therapist pointed out, yeah, he said therapist. I wonder if he slept with his therapist, though. Okay, let me stop. Anyway, his therapist pointed out that it's easy for him to get up and go, and not just to other cities, but leave relationships. Now, I'm not sure why he decided to choose this point in time to share this little nugget of wisdom, because Jasmine is already pumping the brakes on this relationship. Well, maybe he's trying to get her to come to a complete stop and hop out of the car. And it kind of worked because Jasmine was like, I don't have anything to say. And to the confessional cam, she talked about not wanting to open up when it's so easy for him to just cut and go. I think Orgy's starting to see the value in this process in terms of free advice, a little TV exposure, and having the opportunity to use Jasmine as a practice wife, because this dude is opening up and spilling his little issues all over their linoleum floors. I think he's doing this so he won't bring this baggage into his next marriage, or at least the relationship that's waiting for him when he gets out of this situation. I still think he's got ties to one of those women he slept with right before he walked down the aisle. So after they read their letters to their younger selves, it didn't feel like it helped their situation at all. Even after he read Jasmine the letter his father wrote, if these two ever had chemistry, they don't anymore. They are just counting down the days until they can say no to staying married and get back to their single lives. So allegedly, Shaq created a double date with Jasmine and Orgy to play some bow and arrow game that looked like the Wish version of laser tag. So Jasmine and Kirsten had the men give them a little head start countdown so they could go hide. Only problem is this is TV, so they had to keep the lights on so we could see them. And the cameramen and all of their gear had to follow them everywhere in order to film the game. So there was no hiding, just a lot of ducking, giggling, and walking around trying not to get hit by some lightweight arrow. Afterwards, when Shaq and Jasmine sat down to talk, I think this was the moment America was waiting for, to see what their chemistry is like together. Now, I have to admit, they seemed to click and easily opened up to each other. They actually looked a little cute together. Okay. Shaq even gave her a little compliment and said she's beautiful. So we know that if they were matched, he would have at least found her attractive, unlike Orgy. Anyway, Shaq told her that Kirsten was looking at a house that cost $2.9 million, as if she's insinuating that Shaq needs to buy one of these for her. Girl, you better start selling and slanging houses if you want a $3 million crib. He's still trying to pay off his textbooks from last semester. He talked about his frustration about not meeting Kirsten's dad. Meeting her dad is not going to make being married to her any easier, Shaq. Let it go. So after their bow and arrow sesh, Shaq and Kirsten talked about the house situation again, but this time she added that he can replace her Benz with a Lamborghini, then claimed she was kidding about that and the house. No, you weren't. Like you said, this is who you are, and it just sounds like you were expecting to be matched with a pro athlete, doctor, or the man who invented chewing gum, like dudes who were super rich. Anyway, their little fight about whether or not she was really joking, she's allowed to make jokes, but he can't, was annoying to watch. Bottom line is, they're both frustrated that they didn't get the person they wanted. When it came time for Nicole to show Chris her roots, they had to go to some random Italian deli because she grew up in New York. So she talked about her parents being trusting with her and not setting boundaries or having many rules. So she took advantage by cutting classes, lying to her parents in order to hang out with kids who were a bad influence, and in her words, weren't worthy of her attention. So it sounds like she needed guidance from her parents, but since they didn't offer it up, she allowed her friends to guide her. But unfortunately, she chose folks who guided her down the wrong path. So instead of Chris reading his letter to his younger self to Nicole, she read his letter to his younger self for him. Sounds like his mother was in a very toxic relationship when Chris was young, and he feels guilty for not speaking up and saying something to his mom about it back then, thinking if he did, she may have seen the light. Chris, your only job was to be a kid. Your mom was a grown woman who, if anything, needed advice or intervention from other grown folks. So later, Chris took Nicole to a paint store because his father owns a paint business. He worked for his dad, but he didn't like it because his dad was mean and not a good role model. He didn't seem to have a happy childhood. After listening to them in this episode, I'm not sure if these two are truly falling in love or trauma bonding. They both have some serious backgrounds that they haven't healed from. I'm hoping they are capable of having a healthy relationship at this point in their individual healing processes. I'm still holding out hope for them, though. In any case, them talking about his childhood in a paint store was the perfect metaphor for this episode because it was like watching paint dry. Ciao, that's all I got for now. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in my next video.